You're watching The World with me, Charles Anyegolu. Well, let's take you now back to our top story, and that is lots of stories swirling around Ukraine, one of them being, of course, the UK, as a result of pressure from the United States, deciding that it's going to raise its spending on defense, and a whole lot of other stories around rare earth minerals and all the rest of it. The man who knows much more about these things than I do is Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, who is an international affairs analyst, and he joins me now on the line from London. Dr. Laskiewicz, good to see you again. Let's start with the UK, where you are. Defense spending in Britain will go up to 2.5% of GDP. How much of a difference will that make for Britain's defense? I'm not quite sure what is going on there, but we can't hear. We can see you, but we can't hear you. But have we got him now? Well, whilst we're waiting to connect to him, his sound simply wasn't there. We were going to be talking about that, as well as all the other things, the sudden sort of rush of excitement over rare earth minerals from Ukraine. We've had beyond the United States making overtures in that direction. We're now hearing from the Europeans, the European Union also saying that they're interested in doing a deal with Ukraine over its rare earth minerals. And not to be outdone, the Russians are also saying that they've got lots of minerals too, and that people are welcome to come and help them develop it. Well, let's go back to Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Apologies, we had a bit of a problem with your sound there. But defense spending in the UK will be up by 2.5% of GDP. How much of a difference will that make for Britain's defense?
Not much, to be honest. First and foremost, there's a bit of kerfuffle about the figures because 0.2% is about 6 billion, not 13. But setting aside this point, it is nowhere near the 5% that President Donald Trump was talking about. It is slightly more. It will make a small difference, but it's not nearly enough to be significant in any way. What is also interesting about it was that international aid was cut without so much as a whimper. No one said anything at all about this aspect. So it's not as if Great Britain is spending more internationally. All it's done is simply shift its spending a little bit from aid to the military.
Well, I mean, I think the figure is actually 2.5%, which is a significant increase. But, I mean, you mentioned cutting international aid there. I mean, how much difference will that make? Because from what I'm hearing and reading, it's bad news for lots of people on the receiving end around the world.
Quite right. There seems to generally be a complete inability to perceive the advantages of aid or soft power or anything. President Donald Trump was the first one who started it, and Great Britain is now following. Incidentally, the raise from 2.3 to 2.5% is a difference of 0.2%, is what I had in mind. However, the point here is that, as you rightly say, there will be losers in this, and this doesn't get a look in at present. It's not clear why such a relatively small increase in the military spending is going to help much, but it will certainly damage the aid, because that's gone from 0.5 to 0.3%, which is a huge drop. It's almost 40%.
And you mentioned soft power, Dr. Laskiewicz. So a cut in international aid and an increase in defense spending. I mean, are these two British announcements likely to go down well in Washington?
No. The reason is that it's simply insufficient in terms of the military. Donald Trump has constantly said it should be close to 5%. Hence, Poland, on its visit there recently, received the accolade of a thank you and an expression of support from President Donald Trump. 2.3 to 2.5% is not a lot, and it's unlikely to impress President Donald Trump, although it is something, I suppose. But in terms of, as I say, soft power and the ability to have a role around the world, that 0.5 down to 0.3% in terms of aid is a significant drop. And actually, it's quite damaging in its way, because other countries are in soft power, not least of which in long run countries like Russia, if you remember the Cold War.
I was wondering how much timing is a factor in all of this, because Keir Starmer is due in Washington imminently later this week, and before he gets there, this says to Mr. Trump that the UK is serious. So he's clearly not looking for a row with President Trump, despite all the provocations over Ukraine.
Quite right. The timing is all important because he wants to go to Donald Trump with at least some sort of positive message. However, it's the second part of your sentence which is critical. The UK is not looking for a row with USA. Unlike Europe, it is not talking about going it alone. It wants to stay with America. And that aspect of his visit is far more important than his military spending, in my opinion, because Donald Trump is actually, in a sense, running out of allies. If he thinks Russia is an ally, I think you ought to read a little bit of history books. Russia is not a good ally for anyone in the long run. And the Europeans are, of course, incensed about Greenland and about the fact that not only are they cut out of the peace talks, but Donald Trump wants to cut them out of the mineral wealth of Ukraine as well.
Yes, I was going to talk a little bit about that mineral wealth, but looking at the clock where it's kind of ticking ahead and we've got to go and talk to somebody in the United States. So let me turn to that relationship between Europe and America. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, has been in Washington meeting President Trump, and seemingly a lot of positivity coming out of that.
Yes, the whole point about the President of France's visit is that it's a visit from one of the two key nations in the EU, the other one being Germany, of course. And therefore, President Donald Trump is seeing what the European reaction is. And the central point about it is that EU completely disagrees more or less with President Donald Trump's policy. It wants a share in the peace process. It does not agree with giving Russia any share of the Ukrainian territory. It also objects to the funding deal via mineral wealth of Ukraine going to America. So there's not much common ground there. And just to add to everything, President Donald Trump voted alongside Russia recently about the war in the UN. So there's virtually nothing in common between the two countries at present.
Well, let me come to that as a final question to you, because, I mean, the US, as you said, went against its European allies and sided with Russia and North Korea and Iran at the United Nations. I mean, how extraordinary is that?
It is fairly stunning, the entire reversal of USA policy that President Trump has brought in. The people that USA voted alongside previously would be seen dead with. It's quite extraordinary. However, it also means that there is now no consistent Western approach to Ukraine. There's no consistent Western approach to the war. There's nothing consistent about it, and NATO has vanished out of sight. The net effect of that UN voting is to simply show that the West is in disarray.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is an international affairs analyst who was talking to me on the line there from